I would like to thank MD Thomas for sending me this article right here. And I also have to give a shout out to J-Dog because he actually did a commentary separate from what I'm about to talk about right now on his channel, talking about kind of delving into what this kind of story is going to discuss, but his was talking about overseas. This one's going to be in the States. But it's pretty much lining up with the same thing. Now, you see this picture that I have on your screen that says gender neutral restroom. You see on the far left, you have the woman. In the middle, you have the man. And then on the far right, you have the confused individual. I'm just going to leave it at that. Confused individual, where you have a man, but it has on the outside, it has that of a dress. It's supposed to represent the transgender individual. But anyway, in Pennsylvania, there was this high school student that said that they felt that their civil rights were violated when a transgender individual, a transgender student, used the women's locker room. This was a man or a male who dresses up or parades themselves around as a girl going into the girls' locker room. So I'm going to go ahead and read this story so you can get all the details from it, because this is definitely going to lead into something. A high school student in Pennsylvania has filed a complaint against her school claiming that her civil rights were violated and that she was subjected to sexual harassment when a transgender student used the same locker room as her. An attorney working with the teen has already filed the complaint with the U.S. Department of Education Civil Rights Division detailing the female student's experience in a Honesdale high school locker room earlier this year. In a video accompanying the complaint, the unnamed 15-year-old student says she immediately became worried when she heard a man's voice as she was getting dressed. The complaint states that the transgender student in question identifies as female. While I was putting on my pants, I heard a man's voice, so I turned around and he's standing there on the opposite aisle looking at me. I glanced down and I could tell that he was wearing women's underwear and what was underneath it. According to the complaint, students weren't made aware that the transgender student was given permission to use the women's locker room. The complaining student's attorney, Andrea Shaw, is now identifying the incident as a case of sexual harassment. Opening up restrooms and locker rooms facilities to members of the opposite sex is sexual harassment. Like most forms of sexual harassment, the girls in the school have little power over their situation. Shaw went on to say that the school's offered solution was for her client to wait outside of the locker room until the transgender student, who Shaw refers to as the individual of the opposite sex despite her identifying as female, was finished changing. Now did y'all just hear that? So they basically are telling this naturally born female that she has to wait outside of the women's locker room until the confused individual, as in person number 3 on the picture, is done changing. Does anybody else not see the agenda that's pushing here? And people love to say that there's not an agenda being pushed here, when clearly there is. Let me continue. The complaint further added that the school asked the transgender student if she, and they referred to that person as she, when that clearly is a boy, would be comfortable changing behind the shower curtain, with which they complied. Further, going forward to the spring 2019 semester, the schedule of the student who placed the complaint has been changed so that she's no longer enrolled in gym class with the transgender student. The complaint alleges that this doesn't lessen the 15-year-old's daily fear. The privacy rights of these girls don't change based on what a male believes about their gender. Administrators from Wayne Highlands School District didn't respond to Yahoo's lifestyle request for comment. However, the superintendent told WNEP that the district's current policy aligns with a recent court decision to allow trans students to use the facilities of their choosing. Do you not see the agenda at work here? Now, this one wasn't as extreme as the one J-Dog did. Now, the one he did talked about how this transgender individual, who I believe was 18, went into the women's bathroom where this 10-year-old girl was, and he sexually assaulted this girl. And then when the mother came in, to see what was going on, with her daughter, he then proceeded, I believe, to sexually assault her. And this was overseas. Now, there was always this constant struggle debate whether they should allow transgender people to use the restroom of their choosing depending on what they decide to masquerade as that day. This is exactly why stories like these and the one I was just telling you about is why people don't agree with that. Because so much of it, like, is so much of it is just is not going to work. I remember Chris Miller had did a video, and y'all may have seen this video, where you had this guy who pretended or was saying that he was a woman, went into the GameStop and got into it with the cashier behind the counter because the cashier referred to him as a man, and he came back and said, "I'm not a man, ma'am, I'm ma'am." Like, he literally had all his bass in his voice and really thought people were supposed to believe that he was transitioned into a woman or a woman, period. And people wonder why people like them in their lifestyle was considered a mental disease or mental illness years ago. But unfortunately, they took that off and replaced it with gaming. Maybe they need to go back and look at that again and put it back on that list and keep it there. But that's some, like I said, that's some wild shit. But I'm telling you, people keep saying there's not an agenda being pushed. Yes, there is. And usually the people who said that there's not an agenda being pushed are the ones pushing the damn agenda. Y'all let me know what you think about this down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. I will talk to you in the next one.